This is Post Ugly. I'm Ruth Solorzano. Escaping abuse can be a challenge for any survivor, but the layers involved in escaping are something many people don't understand. When the abuser has power over you, breaking away from that mental grip can become your main obstacle. As Dr. Christie Jenkins from the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center mentioned last episode, the escape can take anywhere from 1 to 16 times before you have a successful attempt. And when a child is searching for a way out, it can be next to impossible, even after they turn 18.
I knew I had to get out, and for me, that was I needed to go to college out of state, as far or whoever would take me. So that ended up being a school in New York, which kind of then tied me, though, unfortunately, on a financial level to some degree. While they didn't pay for all of my school, they paid for some, which then was constantly thrown in my face. But for me, at least, it meant I didn't have to be there every day. There was no reason if I went to a nearby college that I could even come home for a weekend. I could use every excuse in the book. The escape wasn't always, I don't think most people's escapes are cut and dry. Because, you go home for Christmas and sometimes my mom would pay for that. And that would then be, well, look what I did for you. You're ungrateful. You're a piece of shit who went away and then now I'm spending all this money on you. It's like, okay, well, don't. You offered to stop doing it then. So I guess for me, the kind of large escape was financial freedom. It was my goal immediately. At the time I turned 18, I needed to never need anything from them.
When you are a child, even when you turn 18, you're still tied to your parents financially. So, like if you were to fill out a FAFSA or to get student loans or grants or those kind of pieces, they look at your parents' income. And so you're not able until well into your 20s, or if you were to get married, to be on your own and have that accepted as your own. And so that's another piece that we often see with children who have been abused. We see college, we see military, and then we see very quick marriages. So just to be able to get out and start something new somewhere else.
Actually, it's kind of messed up. On my 18th birthday, then like the next week I was going into the military. So the next 2 weeks I was going to be in boot camp. I'm not sure what I thought of it. Mm-hmm. I probably was scared.
Why did you join the military?
Oh, God. Not for good reasons. I just didn't believe in myself. But I think looking back, I was just had a lot of despair. Too much despair that went unrecognized and unspoken. When I took the college entrance exam, I didn't do particularly well on it. And I did not want to stay in that crappy neighborhood I lived in.
What's it like here? What's the neighborhood like?
Like a bad neighborhood.
I grew up outside of Chicago in a place called Maywood. The way I remember it, I just remember a lot of bad shit. My friend, he doesn't seem to think about it as bad as I do. I don't think anybody thinks about it as bad as I do. But it was just, it was just too threatening. I think I was worried a lot.
Yeah.
For a child, I don't really know how much, but I did worry a lot.
Because you don't know if a bullet gonna come through your window. You don't know why you're going to the store, if you're gonna be shot at, or your children be hurt in any kind of way.
It's the last time they were shooting here.
Well, my building last night.
Indigenous, African American, and mixed race populations have the highest percentage of reporting abuse. But because of systemic racism, resources to combat abuse are often difficult to obtain. But these communities aren't the only ones with the issue.
It's interesting because when we think about, where does this happen? I think that everyone's first response is that it happens in poor communities, that it happens with folks of specific races or ethnic identities. And, you can't have statistics like 1 in 4 females being sexually assaulted before they're age 18 and 1 in 6 boys being sexually assaulted before age 18 without having it everywhere. What we see with our more affluent populations is that they're better at hiding it than other folks.
Research shows that cases investigated in wealthy towns were more often dropped when compared to cases in poor communities. And in the rare cases that result in the removal of a child from a home, the child from an affluent family is more likely to be returned to their parents. Attempts have been made to grant children more rights over their well-being, most notably one made almost 3 decades ago.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child it's going to be 30 years old this September.
This is Niles. She's a communications consultant and has been working within the United Nations for over 15 years.
The United Nations began working on it in 1989, and it's an extraordinary document because it codifies that children everywhere have their own rights. They're not, that are separate from their family. So things like the right to life, their right to their own name and ID, their right to privacy, and even, obvious things like protection from abuse and exploitation, but also little things like they have a right to their own opinion. It came into being after they got enough ratified signatures in September 1990. And it's the most widely ratified treaty in human history. So every nation on earth has ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, except for the United States of America. I was working at UNICEF at the time, and I didn't even know about it. To my shame, I did not know about the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And when I read it, I thought, wow, I wish I'd known this as a kid. I think my childhood would have been different. If you grow up just knowing that you have the right to your own opinion, that you have the right to good health, to a social life, a cultural life. I think these things, they may seem a wee bit abstract in the big picture, but I think if it was more widely known, that would be tremendously beneficial.
Many think physically escaping is the final checkpoint. However, the mind can stay trapped long after the abuse has ended.
I've had many moments in my life where I felt like the world would be better off without me and that I was worthless. It's a weird feeling. You tell people that, they're like, you really? You feel like that? I have had very dark moments. I am not a gloomy type. I'm not a depressed person. I'm fairly cheerful almost all the time, no matter what. I'm not an angry person. I don't get grumpy per se. I don't have those kinds of, you're not going to see that, but I've had moments where it's like suicide. It's like a flash. It's hard to explain. It's not like I dwell on killing myself and la 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 la. It's like it just comes to me in a flash, like almost like I can see it, like it's running. Like that would be such a relief. But I haven't been in that place for a while.
When we look at the statistics for suicide within this population, 23% of survivors have attempted suicide, as opposed to 3% of the general population who has never been abused. So that's a huge increase. That's a giant increase. And what we see is that the suicidal ideation increases as a person continues to re-experience both mental anguish and hopelessness. Secrets get bigger over time, and so they're re-experiencing all of this stuff within their head and within their heart, and they know that there's no way out of it, or they think there's no way out of it.
My 20s was, there's lots of different bits to this sort of experience, isn't there? It's like ridiculously, I think erotomania is a phrase, like in my 20s, just sleeping with people, one night stands, all that stuff, like completely ridiculous. But I was lucky because I was working in clubs and I was in places where everyone was kind of up for partying. And so I didn't have to, like, quote unquote, prey on people or pressure anyone or anything. Like, that was really easy to do. But it wasn't healthy. It just wasn't healthy. Mm-hmm. And it was fine when you're 20, you're partying. It's almost cool, right? And then you suddenly realize, like, shit, man, I can't hold a relationship down. Just sort of appeasing yourself. And that behavior continued from the 20s, and then I came over to the States in my 30s. Sort of pushing this all away, and then it just came back with like a force, just inside. And I made a really stupid comment on Facebook about like doing myself in, and then I passed out. And next thing I know, the police were and knocking on the door. I kind of woke up and there's like 4 cops there, saying, "Oh, we believe someone's in peril." And I'm like, "No, I'm just asleep. Is everything all right?" And then I realized a friend in England had seen this posting and called them, so they knew a bit about my background. Mm-hmm. And that was it, man. I was like, "Oh, Jesus, this is getting serious. I need to sort this out." So that was it. And then so I did a year of therapy for the first time, and I was, mid-40s, so it was a long time coming.
It's imperative as counselors, as helpers, that we do suicide risk screenings for all survivors, that we're looking at doing safety plans with folks, even as friends, neighbors, co-workers, that we're assessing these things and seeing, we're asking the right questions, and we're seeing if folks need resources. If somebody is saying, I don't see what the point is anymore. I don't know why I wake up in the morning. Take those things seriously. I think we live in a society where folks disregard a lot of this as, oh, they would never do it. And we don't know, not one single person usually that we know of when somebody completes suicide goes, "Oh, yep, knew they were going to do it." Usually they're like, "Oh my goodness, like that person was so happy," or that person tried to make everybody else happy, or they always found the good in things, and they're so shocked. And that's why we have to take all of these things very, very seriously.
Honestly, it just kind of progressed because he had daughters that lived in LA, and he would take trips down there every other weekend to go and see them. Or like at least once a month, but usually it was like every other weekend. And he started taking me with him. Got into 8th grade, I started being homeschooled, and I was like really isolated. We started getting really religious, so we weren't even going to church. We started like having church at home. I look back now and I just know it was a way for him to isolate me. When we started going to LA, he would start doing things like letting me listen to like secular, regular music is one thing, because he knew that I always loved music as a kid. Like I used to do talent shows and stuff. And when we got into religion, one of the big things I remember was I had to like sell all of my CDs because they were bad. So I had my like Backstreet Boys and like Spice Girls and all that shit. And so when we'd go on these trips, he would like let me listen to whatever I wanted to listen to. And I'm at this time like 12 years old. The whole way there, the drive is 6 hours. He'd basically try to be my friend. And he knew that I didn't have any friends. And my mom was never around. She was always busy with my brother and sister. He was like the only person I had in this strange world. He made it that way. Back then, we didn't have internet. Internet wasn't a thing yet. Nobody had a phone. There was no way for me to be able to kind of see the outside world and see that what was happening to me wasn't normal. And it's like I always knew that it was, I felt it, I knew that I fucking that this was like the most repulsive thing that was happening to me. And but at the same time, it was just this weird place, that I just didn't know how to handle. As I got older, 14 and 15, I started to work. And he, of course, got me a job at the company that him and my mom worked at. And he was my boss. Through the years, all I can think about is how can I get out of this situation? Finally, it was when I turned 17, I think, my mom and him got a divorce. But we still all worked at this company together. I remember when I finally decided that I was not gonna put myself in the same area of him, I was gonna break free. I remember we were at where we worked and it was outside. We're standing there and I just told him, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. When I started at community college, I started dating somebody for the first time. It was my first actual boyfriend. And I was 18. But finally, that's when, we got cell phones. I had a Nokia. I started getting text messages from an unknown number. And the number was telling me that the guy I was dating was cheating on me, that it was his girlfriend, the guy I was dating's girlfriend. And he was very much I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not dating anybody, absolutely not. But I was getting these threats from this number saying that if I kept dating him, that she was going to make my life miserable. And so I broke up with him because I was like, this isn't worth it. And then I start dating somebody else. And the same thing happens. And while this is happening, I was in Wizard of Oz. I start getting these messages. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm just going to break up with this guy because I don't understand. And I'm as I said, I'm very naive at this point still. And even after I break up with the guy, I keep getting messages. And then all of a sudden, I get messages telling me that they know my secret. And that they're going to tell everyone. And that they're going to put flyers up everywhere, the night of the show. And of course, nothing happened. I went and I did the show and it was great. And I get laid off from that job that I was working at with him and my mom. That was a big turning point too, because then I just didn't see him ever. And that was kind of it, it was after, the Wizard of Oz and after I got laid off from that job when I was 19 that I really finally started to feel like I was breaking free.
When we look at Stockholm Syndrome, we look at a type of emotional bonding as a means of survival. But it can be a couple different ways because sometimes in families, only certain members are abused, which is really clinically fascinating. It's also interesting with that syndrome that folks within the household, even if they're being abused or not, will identify with the abuser because they are the more powerful one. They are the one who gets things done that you want to align yourself with. And it's truly it's a means of survival. It's a means of safety. If I can identify with this person, if I can somehow make sense of this, I won't go insane.
Taking back my power took a lot longer than I could have ever imagined. But with time, support from others, and a lot of therapy, I gained my individuality and the strength to break away. The guest speaker this season is Dr. Christie Jenkins, who is the CEO of the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center and core faculty at Walden University. For more information and resources, visit fcapc.org. Thank you to our special guest, Niles. She's a communications consultant for the United Nations. If you know of a child being abused, please report it to your local Children's Advocacy Center or call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Original music and sound production by Hugo Fowler. Original artwork by J. Brooks Robinson. This show was produced and edited by me, Ruth Solorzano. If you like Post Ugly, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, give us a review, and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps other people find the show. And thank you to our courageous survivors for sharing your stories.